Let's meet the Medal of Honor. This is my very first episode, and in this episode, I would like to dive into the story of a Marine's heroism in the Ganjegal ambush. This is your host, Nasirullah John Safi, a former U.S. military combat interpreter, wounded in service, and the author of 3 books. Get the Tarp Up Here, an intimate view of the war as seen through the eyes of an interpreter to use forces in Afghanistan, indispensable in 1,000 miles to freedom. Bringing you first-hand stories from the front lines, stories of war, sacrifice, and resilience. Welcome to Echoes from the Battlefield, where I bring you real, raw, and untold stories from those who have walked through the fire and have fought in the world's toughest battles. Today I take you to Afghanistan, where one Marine's actions would make history, the first living Marine to receive the Medal of Honor since the Vietnam War. That day was September 7, 2009, a day that would etched into history for those who lived it. This is the story of a mission that was supposed to be a simple key leader engagement, or also known as a meeting with locals, but turned into something far more dangerous. This is the story of heroism, defiance, and an unshakable will to bring his fellow soldiers and team home. We know every mission, every daily patrol and operation starts with a plan, and that plan includes intelligence, strategy, and tactics. That's how it's supposed to work. But what happens when the plan is flawed, when leadership won't listen, when the enemy is waiting for you before you even step foot in the village? That's exactly what happened in this mission in Afghanistan back in 2009. The Marine at the center of the story was already known for his high-level tactical knowledge and fearless fighting at Combat Outpost Monty during our daily patrols, missions, and operations. He could see the flaws in this mission plan, and he wasn't about to let bad leadership cost lives. Dakota Meyer is one of the best I had the honor of serving alongside deep in the rugged Hindu Kush Mountains in eastern Afghanistan. His bravery, leadership, and unwavering commitment in the face of danger are something I witnessed firsthand. Today, I dive into those moments, into the mission, the brotherhood, and the sacrifice made on the battlefield. That day was September 7, 2009. Early in the morning, all Combat Outpost Monty and Forward Operating Base Joyce Embedded Training Team, or also known as a small group of Marines who were working and supporting alongside their Afghan counterparts A&A, briefed on a mission into the Ganjegal Valley. It was meant to be a KLE or key leader engagement. Let's talk about Ganjegal Valley. I'll do a brief introduction into Ganjegal Valley. Ganjegal Valley is nestled deep in the rugged mountains of eastern Afghanistan. It is located in the Kunar province, a region known for its unforgiving terrain and strategic significance in the war on terror. Positioned near Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Bajawar area known as a safe haven of Taliban and other insurgents, the valley had long been a hotbed for insurgents' activities, serving as a key route for Taliban and foreign fighters moving between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Ganjegal is infamous for the Battle of Ganjegal on September 8, 2009, where U.S. and Afghan forces engaged in a brutal firefight against a well-coordinated ambush. It was here that Dakota Meyer, a U.S. Marine, earned the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions in rescuing fellow soldiers under heavy enemy fire. Let's go back to the briefing room and what was going on in the briefing room back in Fab Joyce and at Combat Outpost Monty. In the briefing room, everyone was told that there would be no air support available for this mission, but indirect fire or IDF would be on standby. Vehicles were said to be staged about 2 kilometers from the objective. The mission began with the combined forces of U.S. military and Afghan soldiers moved toward the village. first by vehicle, then on foot. They were heavily armed, but what they didn't know was that the enemy was waiting. Dakota Meyer, along with Staff Sergeant Juan and a Lieutenant Colonel, would be positioned with some Afghan soldiers. Staff Sergeant Voss and Gunny Miller were assigned to the North Ridgeline with their Afghan counterparts, ANA soldiers, to provide overwatch, while Corporal Norman and Anis too happened to be captured along with their ANA soldiers took up similar positions on the opposite or on the southern ridgeline. Meanwhile, an Afghan border police or ABP unit with an LTV was stationed east side of the ORP or objective rally point, prepared for any necessary medevacs. So when orders came down, Dakota made a choice. He disobeyed. He took his team, knowing they needed to be positioned correctly for what was coming. Some might call it insubordination, others would call it instinct. He knew that the shit was about to hit the fan. The plan dictated that the Overwatch team would push forward and sit in position after they established the ORP. Once they were set, the main element would begin its movement toward the village. The scout team was to be positioned on the southern ridgeline, observing the village from 2 kilometers away, well out of Victor's small arms. Leading the charge was Gunnery Sergeant Johnson and Staff Sergeant Kennefic, accompanied by 8 Afghan National Army soldiers. Their task was to push east of the village, have the ANA search a few structures for a suspected PKM, and then establish an overwatch position. The main force commanded by Lieutenant Johnson and 3rd ANA Company would systematically clear the village, house by house. Meanwhile, Major Williams, Lieutenant, and First Sergeant Garza and ABP soldiers and a group of ANA forces would conduct the key leader engagement or meeting with locals. But at the same time, intelligence suggested that there were 30 to 40 enemy fighters in the village, possibly waiting to ambush them with small arms, indirect fire, and even recoilless rifles, or also known as 82 millimeters. After the briefing, both Lieutenant Johnson and Staff Sergeant Kennefic expressed concerns. They requested that Dakota Meyer join the lead element. Their request was denied. Lieutenant Johnson also argued for moving the gun trucks closer behind the main element to prove supporting fire with crew-served weapons. His request was also denied by someone who insisted on a surprise approach. But at the same time, the communication plan was also falling apart. They were asking for indirect fire and air support, but none were available at the moment. And the dangers close, where friendly forces were pretty close and could be killed by friendly fires. The communication plan, everyone over 10 different elements would be on single ATT net, one channel and one frequency. It was clear that the mission had flaws. The brief itself didn't even feel structured, it seemed hastily put together. Afterward, Dakota spoke what Staff Sergeant Juan. They both knew the plan wasn't solid, so they made a decision. If things went sideways, they would take a gun truck in along with their interpreters and get their fellow soldiers out. That was the plan, but as you will hear soon, things didn't go accordingly to plan. In the next episode, I will dive into what happened when boots hit the ground in Ganjegal Valley. Stay tuned. This has been Echoes from the Battlefield. If you appreciate these raw, unfiltered stories, hit the subscribe button and share this episode, because these stories deserve to be told. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and honor the fallen. Again, this is your host, Nasrullah John Safi.